Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to another cozy journey into the past. Tonight, we're stepping into the candlelit world of the 1700s, where letters weren't just notes, they were epic sagas, written with quills, sealed with wax, and sent on journeys longer than some novels. This is a story of ink-stained fingers, heartfelt words, and the occasional nap over a writing desk. So, snuggle into your favorite blanket, dim the lights, and let's drift back to a time when every letter was a labor of love, crafted with care and a touch of absurdity. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let the gentle rhythm of this tale carry you into a world of parchment and patience. Ready? Let's begin. Picture yourself in a quiet 18th century room, perhaps in London or Philadelphia. It's 1750 and the world moves at the pace of a horse's trot. Candlelight flickers on a wooden desk where a writer sits, quill in hand, crafting a letter that might take weeks to reach its recipient. The streets outside hum with the clatter of carriages and the calls of street vendors, but here, time slows to the rhythm of ink and paper. In the 1700s, letter writing wasn't just communication, it was an art, a ritual, and sometimes a test of endurance. Why did people pour hours, even days, into crafting these missives, and why did they write with such elaborate flourish? Tonight, we'll wander through the forgotten world of 18th century letters, exploring the tools, traditions, and quirky characters who made them unforgettable. We'll meet philosophers who wrote 50-page epistles, lovers who penned poetry by moonlight, and postmen who braved storms to deliver a single sheet. With each chapter, we'll sink deeper into the cozy, whimsical world of quills, seals, and the long wait for a reply. So let's sit at the writing desk where the air smells of wax and the fire glows softly, and begin the story of the forgotten art of really long letters in 10 parts. Part 1, The Dawn of the Long Letter. Let's begin in the early 1700s, a time when the world was stitched together by words on paper. Europe was emerging from the tumult of the late 17th century, with new ideas about science, philosophy, and society swirling through coffee houses and salons. The Enlightenment was dawning, and with it came a passion for correspondence. Letters weren't just messages, they were lifelines, connecting friends, families, and thinkers across vast distances. In an age before telephones or telegraphs, a letter was the only way to share news, confess love, or argue about the nature of the universe. And in the 1700s, people didn't write short notes, they wrote epics, sprawling missives that could fill dozens of pages, each word a testament to patience and care. The art of letter writing was deeply rooted in the culture of the time. In London, Paris, and colonial cities like Boston, writing was a mark of education and refinement. Gentlemen and ladies prided themselves on their penmanship, crafting letters with the same care they gave to a painting or a sonnet. These weren't dashed-off notes, but carefully composed works written in elegant script on thick, creamy paper. A letter might take hours, even days, to complete, with the writer pausing to sharpen a quill, refill an ink pot, or gaze out a window for inspiration. Imagine a scholar in a velvet coat, seated at a mahogany desk, the soft scratch of his quill blending with the ticking of a clock. The world outside forgotten as he pours his thoughts onto the page. The length of these letters was no accident. In the 1700s, communication was slow and uncertain. A letter from London to Philadelphia might take 2 months by ship, braving storms, pirates, and the whims of the wind. With such delays, writers felt compelled to say everything at once, packing their letters with news, gossip, philosophy, and even poetry. A single letter might include a description of a recent ball, a critique of a new book, and a heartfelt plea for the recipient's health. In 1712, the English writer Joseph Addison wrote a 20-page letter to a friend in Paris, detailing everything from the weather to the state of his soul. Such letters were treasures, read, and reread by candlelight, their pages worn from handling. The tools of letter writing were as important as the words themselves. Quills, made from goose or swan feathers, were the primary writing instrument, their tips carefully cut to create a fine point. Ink, brewed from oak galls or lamp black, was stored in glass inkwells, its rich black hue a symbol of elegance. Paper, handmade and expensive, was a luxury, often imported from mills in France or Italy. Writers took care to avoid smudges, blotting their work with fine sand or a soft cloth. The act of writing was a ritual, a slow dance of dipping, scratching, and blotting, each step requiring focus and calm. Picture a lady in a silk gown, her quill poised over a sheet of parchment, the firelight casting shadows on the wall as she crafts a letter to a distant sister. Letter writing was also a social act, often performed in company. In wealthy households, families gathered in parlors to compose letters, reading drafts aloud for approval. In coffee houses, intellectuals exchanged ideas on paper, passing letters across tables littered with cups and pipes. These gatherings were leisurely, filled with laughter and debate, the air thick with the scent of coffee and wax. In one famous London coffee house, the Grecian, writers like Jonathan Swift and Alexander Pope were known to spend hours crafting letters, their quills scratching furiously as they traded witty barbs. These gatherings were leisurely, filled with laughter and debate, the air thick with the scent of coffee and wax. In one famous London coffee house, the Grecian, writers like Jonathan Swift and Alexander Pope were known to spend hours crafting letters, their quills scratching furiously as they traded witty barbs. These letters, often shared with others, became a form of public performance, their words savoured like a fine wine. The long letter was also a product of necessity. With no reliable postal system, letters were entrusted to travellers, merchants, or ship captains who might deliver them weeks or months later, if at all. Writers compensated by including every detail, knowing it might be their only chance to communicate for a year. In 1720, a Virginia planter wrote a 30-page letter to his brother in London, describing his tobacco crop, his children's education, and his thoughts on the king's health. The letter, carried across the Atlantic by a merchant ship, arrived 6 months later, its pages yellowed but cherished. Such letters were more than correspondence. They were time capsules, preserving a moment in a world that moved slowly. The art of letter writing wasn't without its challenges. Quills broke, ink spilled, and paper tore, testing the patience of even the most dedicated writer. In one amusing diary entry, a London merchant complained of a rebellious quill that splattered ink across a 10-page letter, forcing him to start over. Writers also faced the physical strain of long hours at the desk, their hands cramped, their eyes strained by candlelight. Yet these hardships only added to the letter's value, each word a triumph of effort and care. The result was a document that felt alive, its pages pulsing with the writer's voice, ready to be unfolded and read in a distant land. As we drift through this first chapter, picture a candlelit study where a writer bends over a desk, his quill scratching softly, the world outside silent save for the crackle of the fire. The long letter was more than a message. It was a bridge across time and space, a testament to the human need to connect. Let's linger here a moment, in the quiet of the study where the air is warm and the words flow like a gentle stream, before we move on to the next chapter of our story. Part 2, the social significance of letters. In the 1700s, a letter was more than words on paper. It was a social currency, a way to navigate the intricate hierarchies of 18th century life. From royal courts to rural villages, letter writing was a mark of status, education, and connection, with each missive carrying the weight of reputation and relationship. A well-crafted letter could open doors, mend feuds, or win hearts, while a poorly written one might spell social disaster. Let's step into the elegant salons and bustling post houses of the era. where letters were crafted with care and read with anticipation, their words shaping the bonds of society. Letter writing was a cornerstone of polite society, particularly among the elite. In London, Paris, and colonial capitals like Williamsburg, gentlemen and ladies were judged by their correspondence. A letter's style, its grammar, penmanship, and wit, was as important as its content, reflecting the writer's breeding and intellect. In 1735, Lord Chesterfield, an English statesman, began writing letters to his son, advising him on everything from manners to politics. These letters, later published, became a manual for gentlemanly conduct, with Chesterfield urging his son to write with elegance, for a letter is a mirror of the soul. Such advice was taken to heart, with young men practicing their script by candlelight, their desks littered with crumpled drafts. The social hierarchy of letters was complex. A letter to a superior, like a nobleman or governor, required formal language, with elaborate salutations like, "My most honored lord," and closing phrases like, "Your humble servant." A letter to a friend could be more relaxed, filled with gossip and humor, but still demanded care to avoid offense. Women, in particular, excelled at this art, their letters often blending charm with sharp observation. In 1740, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu wrote a series of letters from Constantinople, describing Turkish baths and harems with such vividness that they were circulated among London's elite. Her letters, read aloud in salons, were a sensation. Their pages passed from hand to hand like a precious manuscript. Letters were also a tool for courtship, a way for lovers to express devotion across miles. In an era when marriages were often arranged, letters allowed couples to build intimacy through words. A suitor might spend days crafting a letter, filling it with poetry, compliments, and promises of fidelity. In 1752, a young Boston merchant wrote a 15-page letter to his beloved, describing a sunset over the harbor and comparing her eyes to the stars of a summer night. The letter, delivered by a trusted friend, won her heart, and the couple married within a year. Such letters were cherished, often tied with ribbon and stored in velvet-lined boxes, their words reread by candlelight. The act of letter writing was a social ritual, often performed in company. In wealthy households, families gathered in parlors to compose letters, with mothers advising daughters on phrasing and fathers correcting sons' grammar. These sessions, held by firelight, were filled with laughter and debate, the air thick with the scent of wax and ink. In coffee houses, intellectuals exchanged letters across tables, their quills scratching as they debated philosophy or politics. In Edinburgh, the Select Society, a club of thinkers, held letter nights, where members read their correspondence aloud, their voices blending with the clink of glasses. These gatherings, leisurely and warm, made letter writing a communal act, a way to strengthen bonds. The social significance of letters extended to the postal system, a patchwork of private couriers and government post houses. In London, the General Post Office, established in 1660, was a hub of activity, with messengers sorting letters by lamplight. Postmen, often former soldiers, braved muddy roads and highwaymen to deliver mail, their leather satchels stuffed with parchment. In rural areas, letters were passed from hand to hand, carried by travelers or merchants. This slow, uncertain system made each letter's arrival a cause for celebration, with families gathering to hear the news. In 1745, a Devon farmer described the joy of receiving a letter from his son in Jamaica, its pages like a voice from across the sea. Letters also played a role in diplomacy and commerce. Ambassadors exchanged lengthy missives, negotiating treaties or reporting on foreign courts. In 1715, the British envoy to France wrote a 40-page letter to King George III detailing a Versailles banquet and the king's mood. Merchants, too, relied on letters to conduct business, their correspondence filled with orders, invoices, and complaints. In Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin, a master letter writer, used his pen to build a printing empire, his letters to London suppliers blending charm with shrewdness. These letters, often written in duplicate to guard against loss, were the backbone of global trade, their words carrying the weight of empires. The social stakes of letter writing were high. A poorly worded letter could offend a friend, ruin a courtship, or anger a patron. In 1738, a young lawyer in London was ostracized after sending a blunt letter to a nobleman who found its tone insufferably coarse. The lawyer, humbled, spent weeks drafting an apology, his desk a mess of ink and paper. Such incidents were fodder for gossip, shared in drawing rooms and taverns, adding to the letter's mystique. Yet, for every misstep, there were triumphs. Letters that forged alliances, won hearts, or changed minds. Their words a testament to the power of the pen. As we settle into this chapter, imagine a candlelit salon where ladies in silk gowns and gentlemen in velvet coats gather around a table, their letters spread before them like treasures. The long letter was a thread in the fabric of society, weaving together hearts and minds in a world of distance and delay. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the salon, where the air is filled with the scent of perfume and the soft rustle of parchment, before we continue our journey. Part 3. The Tools and Craft of Letter Writing. The long letters of the 1700s were as much about the tools as the words, each quill, inkpot, and sheet of paper a vital part of the process. Writing in the 18th century was a craft requiring skill, patience, and a touch of artistry, with every stroke of the pen a deliberate act. The tools, often handmade and cherished, transformed a simple message into a work of beauty, their use a ritual that invited calm and focus. Let's explore the tools and techniques of letter writing, stepping into the workshops and studies where the art of correspondence came to life. The quill was the heart of the process, a simple yet elegant tool made from the feathers of geese, swans, or even crows. Crafting a quill was an art in itself, with scribes cutting the feather's tip at a precise angle to create a fine point. The best quills came from the left wing of a goose, their curve fitting naturally in the right hand. In London, quill makers like John Holland sold their wares in bustling markets, their stalls piled high with feathers. Writers cherished their quills, often naming them like pets. One diarist referred to her favorite quill as Lady Scribble, a companion in countless letters. The act of writing with a quill was slow and deliberate, each dip into the ink pot followed by a careful stroke, the soft scratch of the nib a soothing rhythm. Ink was another essential, brewed from recipes passed down through generations. The most common ink, made from oak galls and iron sulfate, produced a rich black hue that deepened with time. In wealthier households, scribes used exotic inks like sepia from cuttlefish or blue from crushed indigo, their colors a mark of status. Ink was stored in glass or pewter inkwells, often ornately decorated with silver or enamel. Refilling an inkpot was a careful task, with spills a constant hazard. One clumsy move could ruin a day's work. In 1748, a Paris merchant wrote of an ink spill that painted my desk like a starry night, forcing him to rewrite a 12-page letter to his cousin. Paper, handmade and costly, was a luxury in the 1700s. Crafted from linen rags at mills in France, Italy, or the Low Countries, it was thick and textured, with a creamy hue that invited the pen. A single sheet could cost as much as a loaf of bread, making writers frugal with their pages. Letters were often written in tiny, precise script to save space, with some squeezing 500 words onto a single side. In colonial America, where paper was scarce, writers used every inch, writing vertically, horizontally, and even diagonally. These crossed letters, with their overlapping lines, were a challenge to read, but a testament to thrift and ingenuity. The act of writing was a physical endeavor, requiring hours at a desk. Writers sat on wooden chairs, their backs straight, their hands steady to avoid smudges. Candlelight or oil lamps provided illumination, their soft glow casting shadows on the page. To prevent ink from blotting, writers sprinkled fine sand over their work, shaking it off to reveal crisp lines. In wealthier homes, blotting paper, a new invention, was used, its soft surface a luxury. The process was tiring, with cramped hands and aching eyes a common complaint. In one diary, a London clerk described falling asleep mid-letter, his quill leaving a trail of dreams across the page. Sealing a letter was an art in itself, a final flourish that added elegance and security. Wax, made from beeswax or resin, was melted over a candle and dripped onto the folded letter, then stamped with a seal bearing a family crest or monogram. The best seals were carved from silver or ivory, their designs a mark of status. In 1755, a Scottish laird commissioned a seal with a thistle motif, using it to seal letters that travelled as far as Virginia. Breaking a seal was a moment of anticipation, the wax cracking under eager fingers, revealing the words within. Some writers used coloured wax, red for love, black for mourning, adding a layer of meaning to their missives. The tools of letter writing were often passed down through families, their worn surfaces telling stories of their own. A grandmother's inkwell, a father's quill knife, a mother's seal. These were heirlooms, cherished as much as jewelry or silver. In one touching letter, a Philadelphia woman described using her late husband's quill to write to her son, feeling his presence in every stroke. These objects, imbued with memory, made letter writing a deeply personal act, a way to connect not just with the recipient, but with the past. The craft of letter writing also inspired innovation. In 1760, a London stationer invented a travelling ink pot, a small, leak-proof container for writers on the move. The device, made of brass, was a hit among merchants and soldiers who could pen letters in taverns or tents. Another invention, the quill sharpener, was a small blade designed to refresh a quill's point, saving writers the trouble of constant cutting. These tools, though simple, reflected the era's dedication to the written word, turning every letter into a small masterpiece. As we linger in this chapter, picture a cluttered writing desk, its surface strewn with quills, inkwells, and sheets of creamy paper. The fire crackles softly, the candle casts a warm glow, and the world outside fades away, leaving only the gentle rhythm of writing. The tools of the long letter were more than instruments. They were companions in a craft that wove hearts together across miles. Let's rest here, in the quiet of the study, where the air is filled with the scent of ink and the promise of words, before we move on. Part 4, The Global Journey of Letters. The long letters of the 1700s didn't just sit on desks, they travelled the world, carried by ships, horses, and weary postmen across continents and oceans. In an era when communication was as uncertain as the weather, the journey of a letter was an adventure filled with peril, patience, and the occasional miracle. From London to Calcutta, Philadelphia to Cape Town, these missives connected a global network of writers, their words a thread in the tapestry of the 18th century. Let's follow the path of a letter, exploring the postal systems, couriers, and far-flung destinations that made correspondence a global art. The postal system of the 1700s was a patchwork of private and public services, varying widely by region. In Britain, the General Post Office, established in 1660, was the backbone of mail delivery, with post houses in every major town. Letters were sorted by lamplight in London's Lombard Street, then dispatched by horse or coach to their destinations. Postmen, known as postboys, wore scarlet coats and carried leather satchels, braving muddy roads and highwaymen to deliver their cargo. In 1742, a postboy named Tom Hawkins became a minor hero when he fought off a robber to save a bag of letters, earning a pint of ale and a cheer from his village. In Europe, postal systems were equally varied. France's Poste Royale, founded by Louis XIV, was renowned for its efficiency, with relays of horses ensuring speedy delivery. In the Holy Roman Empire, the Thurn und Taxis family ran a private postal network, their couriers crisscrossing Germany and beyond. These systems, though impressive, were expensive, with postage often paid by the recipient. A letter from Paris to Vienna could cost a day's wages, making letter writing a luxury for the wealthy. In rural areas, letters were passed from hand to hand, carried by travelers or merchants, their delivery a matter of luck and goodwill. Across the Atlantic, colonial postal systems were rudimentary but vital. In America, Benjamin Franklin, appointed postmaster of Philadelphia in 1737, revolutionized mail delivery, establishing regular routes between Boston, New York, and Charleston. Franklin's postmen, often Native American guides or hardy farmers, navigated forests and rivers to deliver letters, their satchels stuffed with parchment. In 1750, a letter from Boston to Williamsburg took 3 weeks, a journey that included ferries, taverns, and the occasional wolf sighting. These letters, often sealed with wax to protect against damp, were a lifeline for colonists, connecting them to family and commerce in Europe. The global journey of a letter was most dramatic by sea. A letter from London to Calcutta might take 6 months, carried by East India Company ships that battled storms, pirates, and scurvy. Writers took precautions, sending multiple copies by different ships to ensure delivery. In 1765, a merchant in Bristol sent 3 identical letters to his agent in Bombay, each describing a shipment of wool. Only one arrived, its pages salt-stained but intact, a testament to the perils of the voyage. Ship captains entrusted with mail often stored letters in locked chests, delivering them with a flourish at their destination. The destinations of these letters were as varied as the world itself. In India, British officials wrote lengthy missives to London describing monsoon rains and Mughal politics. In 1770, a governor in Madras wrote a 25-page letter to the East India Company, detailing a banquet with a local Nawab, his quill scratching by lamplight as servants fanned the air. In Africa, letters from Cape Town to Amsterdam reported on trade and exploration, their pages filled with sketches of zebras and mountains. In the Caribbean, plantation owners wrote to Europe, their letters a mix of business and homesickness, carried by sugar ships across the Atlantic. The journey of a letter was filled with human stories. Postmen, often unsung heroes, faced incredible odds. In 1755, a French courier named Jacques Leclerc swam a flooded river to deliver a letter to Quebec, earning a medal from the governor. In England, post houses doubled as taverns where travellers swapped letters and gossip over ale. In one charming tale, a Devon innkeeper found a lost letter under a table, walking 20 miles to deliver it to its owner, who rewarded him with a loaf of bread and a heartfelt thank you. The global reach of letters also fostered cultural exchange. In 1748, a London scholar corresponded with a Jesuit priest in Peking, exchanging ideas about astronomy and poetry. Their letters, carried by Dutch traders, took a year to arrive but sparked a friendship that lasted decades. In colonial America, women like Abigail Adams wrote to friends in England, sharing recipes and political gossip. Their letters a bridge between worlds. These exchanges, slow and deliberate, enriched the 18th century, making the long letter a global conversation. As we drift through this chapter, imagine a wind-swept ship, its hold stuffed with letters, sailing under a starry sky. The long letter was a traveler carrying dreams and stories across the world, its journey a testament to human connection. Let's rest here, in the quiet of the ship's cabin, where the air is filled with the scent of salt and the soft creak of wood, before we continue. Part 5. The Art of Epistolary Style. The long letters of the 1700s were more than messages. They were literary works crafted with a style that blended elegance, wit, and emotion. In an era when writing was a public performance, Letters were expected to dazzle, with every phrase polished to perfection. The epistolary style, as it was known, was a craft that required skill, creativity, and a touch of flair, turning correspondence into an art form that could soothe and entertain. Let's explore the techniques and traditions of epistolary style, stepping into the minds of writers who turned ink into poetry. The epistolary style was rooted in the ideals of the Enlightenment, which prized clarity, reason, and beauty. Writers aimed to emulate the great letter writers of the past, like Cicero or Madame de Sévigné, whose correspondence was studied like literature. A well-crafted letter began with a formal salutation, "My dearest friend," or "Honored Sir," setting the tone for what followed. The body of the letter was a tapestry of ideas, weaving together news, reflections, and humour. In 1730, the English poet Alexander Pope wrote a letter to a friend, blending a description of his garden with a meditation on friendship. Its prose, so lyrical, it was later published as a poem. Wit was a hallmark of the epistolary style, with writers using humour to charm their readers. In 1741, Jonathan Swift, the author of Gulliver's Travels, wrote a letter to a Dublin friend, poking fun at a pompous bishop whose sermon was "as long as a winter's night." The letter, filled with sharp one-liners, was read aloud in taverns, its wit sparking laughter. Women too excelled at witty correspondence. Lady Mary Wortley. Montague's letters from Turkey were packed with sly observations, like her description of a sultan's court as a circus of velvet and vanity. These letters, circulated among friends, were as entertaining as a novel, their words savoured by candlelight. Emotion was equally important, with writers pouring their hearts onto the page. Love letters, in particular, were masterpieces of passion, filled with poetry and promises. In 1758, a young Edinburgh lawyer wrote to his fiancée, comparing her to a rose in a storm, delicate yet unyielding. The letter, 20 pages long, was so moving that she kept it under her pillow, rereading it until the ink faded. Letters of condolence, too, were deeply felt, with writers offering comfort in flowing prose. In 1760, Samuel Johnson wrote to a friend who had lost a child. His letter, a blend of sorrow and hope that was later published as a model of compassion. The structure of a letter was carefully planned, with writers using rhetorical devices to keep readers engaged. Many followed the classical model of exordium, an introduction, narratio, a narrative, and conclusio, a conclusion, ensuring a logical flow. Others adopted a conversational style mimicking the rhythm of speech. In 1745, the French philosopher Voltaire wrote a letter to a Prussian prince, its chatty tone belying its deep thoughts on liberty. The letter, written over 3 days, was a masterclass in balancing intellect and ease, its words as soothing as a lullaby. Penmanship was a crucial part of the style, with writers spending years perfecting their script. In schools, children practiced on slates, copying flourishes and curls until their hands ached. A beautiful hand, with even lines and graceful loops, was a mark of refinement, admired as much as the words themselves. In 1752, a London governess advertised her services as a teacher of elegant script, promising to turn clumsy scrawls into art. Some writers used coloured inks, blue, red, or green, to add flair, though black remained the standard for formal letters. The act of writing, with its slow, deliberate strokes, was a form of meditation, inviting writers to lose themselves in the page. The epistolary style also reflected the writer's personality. Philosophers like John Locke wrote with precision, their letters dense with ideas about knowledge and government. Poets like Samuel Coleridge filled their letters with imagery, describing storms or sunsets in vivid detail. Women, often confined to domestic roles, used letters to assert their intellect. In 1770, Abigail Adams wrote to her husband John, urging him to remember the ladies in the new American government. Her letters, sharp and eloquent, were a testament to the power of the pen, their words echoing across centuries. The style wasn't without its pitfalls. Overly formal letters could seem stiff, while overly familiar ones risked offence. In 1739, a young clerk in Bristol was reprimanded for addressing his employer as "Dear Tom," a breach of etiquette that cost him a promotion. Writers also struggled with length, as the desire to say everything could lead to rambling. In one amusing letter, a Paris merchant apologized for its 30 pages, joking that his quill had run away like a horse. These quirks, though, only added to the charm, making each letter a unique reflection of its writer. As we settle into this chapter, picture a candlelit desk where a writer crafts a letter with care, her quill dancing across the page, the words flowing like a gentle stream. The epistolary style was a celebration of language, turning the ordinary act of writing into a work of art. Let's rest here, in the quiet of the study, where the air is filled with the scent of ink and the soft glow of inspiration, before we move on. Part 6. The quirky side of letter writing. The long letters of the 1700s weren't all serious philosophy or heartfelt confessions. They had a delightfully quirky side, filled with odd habits, eccentric writers, and moments of pure whimsy. From Sutrati, coded messages, to letters written in verse, the 18th century embraced correspondence with a sense of fun that could make even the most formal missive a source of laughter. Let's explore the lighter side of letter writing, where the quill became a tool for mischief and the page a canvas for absurdity. One of the quirkiest trends was the use of coded or secret letters, a practice popular among spies, lovers, and pranksters. In 1746, during the Jacobite Rebellion, Scottish rebels used ciphers to send letters past English spies, hiding messages in seemingly innocent prose. One rebel, disguised as a merchant, wrote a letter about turnips that was actually a coded plan for an attack. Lovers, too, used codes to keep their letters private. In 1750, a London couple exchanged letters written in a cipher based on Shakespeare's sonnets, their words a puzzle only they could solve. Decoding these letters by candlelight was as thrilling as a novel, with readers savouring each revealed word. Some writers took quirkiness to extremes by composing letters entirely in verse. In 1732, a Cambridge student wrote a 10-page letter to his sister in rhyming couplets, describing a disastrous picnic where ants invaded the sandwiches. The letter, read aloud at family gatherings, became a cherished heirloom, its rhymes sparking laughter. In France, a minor poet named Jacques Duval sent all his correspondence in verse, even mundane notes about paying bills. His creditors, amused but exasperated, often forgave late payments in exchange for a particularly clever stanza. These poetic letters, with their playful rhythm, were perfect for bedtime reading, lulling readers into a gentle slumber. The physical quirks of letter writing added to the fun. Writers often experimented with unusual materials like vellum, calfskin, or paper scented with lavender. In 1760, a London dandy sent a letter written on silk to impress a lady, though the ink smudged disastrously. Others used oversized or tiny paper, creating letters that were comically impractical. In 1748, a Virginia planter sent a letter on a sheet so large it required 2 postmen to carry, earning him a reputation for extravagance. These oddities, though impractical, made each letter a unique artifact, a testament to the writer's creativity. Eccentric writers were the stars of the quirky letter world. In 1755, a retired admiral named Sir Charles Wager filled his letters with doodles of ships and sea monsters, turning them into miniature works of art. His correspondents, including a young Samuel Johnson, treasured these letters, displaying them like paintings. In Paris, a spinster named Madame Lefebvre wrote letters to her cat, addressing it as Monsieur Whiskers and describing her daily routine. After her death, the letters were found in a velvet box, their whimsical prose a delight to her heirs. These characters, with their odd habits, added a touch of humanity to the formal world of correspondence. The quirks extended to delivery methods. In rural areas where postmen were scarce, letters were sometimes tied to pigeons or floated down rivers in sealed bottles. In 1770, a Welsh farmer sent a letter to his brother by tying it to a sheep, which wandered into the right village by chance. In colonial America, letters were hidden in loaves of bread or sewn into coat linings to avoid bandits. These methods, though unreliable, were part of the era's charm, turning delivery into an adventure. One Boston merchant described receiving a letter as if by magic, its pages crumpled but intact after a journey through a storm. The quirky side of letter writing also inspired literature. In 1765, a satirical pamphlet titled The Misadventures of a Quill became a bestseller in London, chronicling the life of a quill that wrote love letters, grocery lists, and a treaty. The pamphlet, with its absurd humor, was a favorite bedtime read, its pages worn from handling. In Germany, a play called The Letter Carrier featured a bumbling postman who delivered love letters to the wrong people, sparking chaos and laughter. These works, filled with gentle wit, captured the era's love affair with correspondence, making the long letter a source of joy. As we linger in this chapter, picture a candlelit tavern where friends gather to read a quirky letter, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses and the crackle of a fire. The long letter was a playground. For the imagination, its quirks a reminder that even in the formal 1700s, people knew how to have fun. Let's rest here in the warmth of the tavern, where the air is filled with the scent of ale and the promise of a good story, before we continue. Part 7. The Emotional Power of Letters. The long letters of the 1700s were more than words. They were vessels for emotion, carrying love, grief, joy, and longing across miles and months. In an era when distance could separate families and friends for years, letters were a lifeline, offering comfort and connection in a world of uncertainty. Their words, crafted with care, had the power to soothe, inspire, and heal, making them cherished treasures in the lives of their recipients. Let's explore the emotional heart of letter writing, stepping into the lives of those who poured their souls onto the page. Love letters were the most poignant, their words a bridge between hearts. In 1754, a young London clerk named Thomas Harrow wrote to his sweetheart in York, filling 18 pages with declarations of love. He described walking by her favourite park, imagining her beside him, and promised to build a life as steady as the Thames. The letter, delivered after a month's journey, moved her to tears, and they married soon after. Such letters, often written by moonlight, were filled with poetry and promises, their prose as tender as a lullaby. Couples kept these letters in locked boxes, rereading them to relive their romance, the pages soft from handling. Letters of friendship were equally powerful, sustaining bonds across continents. In 1762, Benjamin Franklin wrote to his friend William Strahan in London, a 15-page letter filled with warmth and wit. Despite their political differences, the letter reaffirmed their bond, with Franklin joking about their shared love of books and beer. These letters, read by firelight, were a reminder of connection, their words a comfort in lonely moments. Women, in particular, excelled at friendship letters, their correspondence a tapestry of support and gossip. In 1775, Mercy Otis Warren wrote to Abigail Adams, sharing fears about the brewing American Revolution, her words a balm for a friend's anxious heart. Letters of condolence carried a different weight, offering solace in times of loss. In 1740, Samuel Johnson wrote to a friend who had lost his wife, his letter a masterpiece of empathy. He described grief as a river that must be crossed slowly, urging his friend to find peace in memory. The letter, read aloud at a family gathering, brought tears and comfort, its words a guide through sorrow. Such letters were often kept for years, their pages a reminder of shared humanity. In one moving example, a Virginia widow described rereading a condolence letter from her sister, its words like a hand holding mine in the dark. Letters also captured the joy of milestones. Births, weddings, and successes were celebrated. In sprawling missives, their pages filled with exclamation and detail. In 1768, a Dublin merchant wrote a 20-page letter to his brother in Jamaica, describing his daughter's wedding, from the lace on her gown to the fiddler's tune. The letter, carried by a sugar ship, arrived 6 months later, its news sparking a toast across the ocean. These letters, read in parlours or taverns, were a source of shared happiness, their words a spark in the quiet of daily life. The emotional power of letters was heightened by their rarity. With delivery so uncertain, each letter's arrival was a moment of anticipation, its words savoured like a rare gift. Families gathered to hear a letter read aloud, their faces lit by candlelight, their hearts lifted by news from afar. In 1750, a Philadelphia family received a letter from a son in London describing his first snowfall. The letter, read by the fireside, brought laughter and tears, its words a bridge across the Atlantic. These moments, filled with warmth and connection, made letters a cornerstone of emotional life. The act of writing was itself an emotional journey. Writers poured hours into their letters, their thoughts shaped by the rhythm of the quill. In one diary, a London woman described writing to her soldier brother, her tears smudging the ink as she prayed for his safety. The letter, sent to a battlefield in Europe, was never answered, but the act of writing brought her peace. For many, letter writing was a form of therapy, a way to process joy, sorrow, or fear in a world of uncertainty. The emotional power of letters also inspired literature. The epistolary novel, a genre where stories were told through letters, became wildly popular. Samuel Richardson's Pamela, 1740, written as a series of letters, captivated readers with its tale of love and virtue. The novel, read by lamplight, was a bedtime favorite, its emotional depth lulling readers into dreams. These works, blending fact and fiction, showed the power of letters to capture the human heart, their words a mirror of the era's soul. Some writers took quirkiness to extremes by composing letters entirely in verse. In 1732, a Cambridge student wrote a 10-page letter to his sister in rhyming couplets, describing a disastrous picnic where ants invaded the sandwiches. The letter, read aloud at family gatherings, became a cherished heirloom, its rhymes sparking laughter. In France, a minor poet named Jacques Duval sent all his correspondence in verse, even mundane notes about paying bills. His creditors, amused but exasperated, often forgave late payments in exchange for a particularly clever stanza. These poetic letters, with their playful rhythm, were perfect for bedtime reading, lulling readers into a gentle slumber. The physical quirks of letter writing added to the fun. Writers often experimented with unusual materials like vellum, calfskin, or paper scented with lavender. In 1760, a London dandy sent a letter written on silk to impress a lady, though the ink smudged disastrously. Others used oversized or tiny paper, creating letters that were comically impractical. In 1748, a Virginia planter sent a letter on a sheet so large it required 2 postmen to carry, earning him a reputation for extravagance. These oddities, though impractical, made each letter a unique artifact, a testament to the writer's creativity. Eccentric writers were the stars of the quirky letter world. In 1755, a retired admiral named Sir Charles Wager filled his letters with doodles of ships and sea monsters, turning them into miniature works of art. His correspondents, including a young Samuel Johnson, treasured these letters, displaying them like paintings. In Paris, a spinster named Madame Lefebvre wrote letters to her cat, addressing it as Monsieur Whiskers and describing her daily routine. After her death, the letters were found in a velvet box, their whimsical prose a delight to her heirs. These characters, with their odd habits, added a touch of humanity to the formal world of correspondence. The quirks extended to delivery methods. In rural areas where postmen were scarce, letters were sometimes tied to pigeons or floated down rivers in sealed bottles. In 1770, a Welsh farmer sent a letter to his brother by tying it to a sheep, which wandered into the right village by chance. In colonial America, letters were hidden in loaves of bread or sewn into coat linings to avoid bandits. These methods, though unreliable, were part of the era's charm, turning delivery into an adventure. One Boston merchant described receiving a letter as if by magic, its pages crumpled but intact after a journey through a storm. The quirky side of letter writing also inspired literature. In 1765, a satirical pamphlet titled The Misadventures of a Quill became a bestseller in London, chronicling the life of a quill that wrote love letters, grocery lists, and a treaty. The pamphlet, with its absurd humor, was a favorite bedtime read, its pages worn from handling. In Germany, a play called The Letter Carrier featured a bumbling postman who delivered love letters to the wrong people, sparking chaos and laughter. These works, filled with gentle wit, captured the era's love affair with correspondence, making the long letter a source of joy. As we linger in this chapter, picture a candlelit tavern where friends gather to read a quirky letter, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses and the crackle of a fire. The long letter was a playground. For the imagination, its quirks a reminder that even in the formal 1700s, people knew how to have fun. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the tavern, where the air is filled with the scent of ale and the promise of a good story, before we continue. Part 7. The emotional power of letters. The long letters of the 1700s were more than words. They were vessels for emotion, carrying love, grief, joy, and longing across miles and months. In an era when distance could separate families and friends for years, letters were a lifeline, offering comfort and connection in a world of uncertainty. Their words, crafted with care, had the power to soothe, inspire, and heal, making them cherished treasures in the lives of their recipients. Let's explore the emotional heart of letter writing, stepping into the lives of those who poured their souls onto the page. Love letters were the most poignant, their words a bridge between hearts. In 1754, a young London clerk named Thomas Harrow wrote to his sweetheart in York, filling 18 pages with declarations of love. He described walking by her favorite park, imagining her beside him, and promised to build a life as steady as the Thames. The letter, delivered after a month's journey, moved her to tears, and they married soon after. Such letters, often written by moonlight, were filled with poetry and promises, their prose as tender as a lullaby. Couples kept these letters in locked boxes, rereading them to relive their romance, the pages soft from handling. Letters of friendship were equally powerful, sustaining bonds across continents. In 1762, Benjamin Franklin wrote to his friend William Strahan in London, a 15-page letter filled with warmth and wit. Despite their political differences, the letter reaffirmed their bond, with Franklin joking about their shared love of books and beer. These letters, read by firelight, were a reminder of connection, their words a comfort in lonely moments. Women in particular excelled at friendship letters, their correspondence a tapestry of support and gossip. In 1775, Mercy Otis Warren wrote to Abigail Adams, sharing fears about the brewing American Revolution, her words a balm for a friend's anxious heart. Letters of condolence carried a different weight, offering solace in times of loss. In 1740, Samuel Johnson wrote to a friend who had lost his wife. His letter, a masterpiece of empathy. He described grief as a river that must be crossed slowly, urging his friend to find peace in memory. The letter, read aloud at a family gathering, brought tears and comfort, its words a guide through sorrow. Such letters were often kept for years, their pages a reminder of shared humanity. In one moving example, a Virginia widow described rereading a condolence letter from her sister, its words like a hand holding mine in the dark. Letters also captured the joy of milestones. Births, weddings, and successes were celebrated. In sprawling missives, their pages filled with exclamation and detail. In 1768, a Dublin merchant wrote a 20-page letter to his brother in Jamaica, describing his daughter's wedding from the lace on her gown to the fiddler's tune. The letter, carried by a sugar ship, arrived 6 months later, its news sparking a toast across the ocean. These letters, read in parlours or taverns, were a source of shared happiness, their words a spark in the quiet of daily life. The emotional power of letters was heightened by their rarity. With delivery so uncertain, each letter's arrival was a moment of anticipation, its words savoured like a rare gift. Families gathered to hear a letter read aloud, their faces lit by candlelight, their hearts lifted by news from afar. In 1750, a Philadelphia family received a letter from a son in London describing his first snowfall. The letter, read by the fireside, brought laughter and tears, its words a bridge across the Atlantic. These moments, filled with warmth and connection, made letters a cornerstone of emotional life. The act of writing was itself an emotional journey. Writers poured hours into their letters, their thoughts shaped by the rhythm of the quill. In one diary, a London woman described writing to her soldier brother, her tears smudging the ink as she prayed for his safety. The letter, sent to a battlefield in Europe, was never answered, but the act of writing brought her peace. For many, letter writing was a form of therapy, a way to process joy, sorrow, or fear in a world of uncertainty. The emotional power of letters also inspired literature. The epistolary novel, a genre where stories were told through letters, became wildly popular. Samuel Richardson's Pamela, 1740, written as a series of letters, captivated readers with its tale of love and virtue. The novel, read by lamplight, was a bedtime favorite, its emotional depth lulling readers into dreams. These works, blending fact and fiction, showed the power of letters to capture the human heart, their words a mirror of the era's soul. As we settle into this chapter, picture a quiet bedroom where a woman unfolds a letter from her lover, her eyes tracing the words by candlelight, her heart lifted by their warmth. The long letter was a vessel for the soul, its words a comfort in a world of distance and delay. Let's rest here, in the glow of the candle, where the air is filled with the scent of wax and the soft rustle of parchment, before we continue. Part 8. Letters in Literature and Culture. The long letters of the 1700s weren't just private correspondence, they were a cultural phenomenon, shaping literature, theatre, and the public imagination. From novels to plays, poems to pamphlets, letters were celebrated as symbols of wit, emotion, and connection, their words inspiring artists and audiences alike. In an era when the written Word was king, letters became a muse, their pages a canvas for the stories that defined the 18th century. Let's wander through the books, stages, and salons where letters came to life, their words a soothing thread in the tapestry of culture. The epistolary novel was the crown jewel of the era, a genre where stories unfolded through letters. Samuel Richardson's Pamela, 1740, and Clarissa, 1748, were sensations, their letters weaving tales of love, betrayal, and redemption. Clarissa, with its 150 pages of correspondence, was a marathon read, its emotional depth making it a bedtime staple. Readers sank into their armchairs, losing themselves in the heroine's letters, their eyes heavy with sleep. In France, Pierre Choderlos de Laclos' Dangerous Liaison, 1782, used letters to tell a scandalous tale of seduction, its sharp prose captivating salons. These novels, with their intimate, letter-based narratives, made the act of correspondence a literary art, their words as soothing as a lullaby. Letters also inspired poetry, with writers crafting verses in epistolary form. Alexander Pope's epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, 1735, was a letter in rhyme, blending satire with personal reflection. The poem, read aloud in coffeehouses, was a hit, its wit sparking laughter and nods. In 1760, a lesser-known poet, Anne Finch, wrote a letter to Daphnis, a tender verse to her husband, its lines as soft as a summer breeze. These poems, often printed in slim volumes, were cherished by readers, their pages turned by candlelight, their rhythm lulling listeners into rest. Theatre embraced the letter as a dramatic device. In London's Drury Lane, plays like Richard Steele's The Conscious Lovers, 1722, featured characters reading letters on stage, their words driving the plot. Audiences seated in plush boxes savoured these moments, the actors' voices blending with the rustle of silk gowns. In one memorable scene, a heroine read a letter from her lover, her tears prompting sighs from the crowd. Smaller theatres staged letter comedies, where misplaced missives led to hilarious misunderstandings. These plays, performed by gaslight, were a perfect escape, their gentle humour soothing spectators into a state of calm. Letters also shaped the emerging world of journalism. Newspapers like The Spectator, founded by Joseph Addison and Richard Steele, published fictional letters to comment on society. In 1711, The Spectator ran a letter from a country gentleman complaining about London's noise, its prose so vivid it sparked debate in taverns. These letters, blending fact and fiction, were a reader's delight, their words savoured over breakfast or by the fireside. Magazines, too, embraced the trend, with the Gentleman's Magazine printing readers' letters on everything from politics to gardening. These publications, with their inky pages, were a bedtime ritual, their prose a gentle invitation to sleep. The cultural significance of letters extended to visual art. Painters like Jean-Baptiste Greuze depicted women reading letters, their faces lit by soft light, their expressions a mix of joy and sorrow. These paintings, hung in Parisian salons, captured the emotional power of correspondence, their details inviting viewers to linger. In England, engravers produced prints of letter-writing scenes showing scholars at desks or lovers by windows. These prints, framed in wood, were popular gifts, often displayed in parlours where families gathered to write their own letters, the air filled with the scent of wax and ink. Letters also inspired social rituals. In London, letter parties became fashionable, with guests composing missives in elegant salons. These events, held by candlelight, were filled with laughter and wine, the guests' quills scratching as they competed to write the wittiest, Letter. In colonial America, letter-writing clubs sprang up, where members exchanged correspondence on literature and politics. In 1770, a Boston club called the Quill Society held weekly meetings, their letters read aloud by firelight, their words sparking debate and camaraderie. These rituals, warm and leisurely, made letter-writing a shared joy, a way to connect. In a fragmented world, the cultural legacy of letters was profound, shaping how people saw themselves and their world. In an era of exploration and enlightenment, letters were a symbol of human connection, their words a bridge between minds. They inspired stories, songs, and dreams, their pages a record of the 18th century's heart. In one poignant example, a London bookseller kept a letter from his late wife, its words a reminder of their love, read nightly until his own passing. As we settle into this chapter, picture a candlelit theatre where an actor reads a letter on stage, his voice echoing through the hushed crowd, their faces softened by the glow. The long letter was a muse for the arts, its words a source of beauty and comfort in a changing world. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the theatre, where the air is filled with the scent of velvet and the promise of a story, before we continue. Part 9. The social dynamics of letter writing. Letter writing in the 1700s wasn't just a personal act, it was a social dance, shaped by the rules and expectations of class, gender, and status. Each letter was a performance, its words carefully chosen to reflect the writer's place in the world and their relationship with the recipient. From royal courts to humble cottages, letters were a way to navigate the complex dynamics of 18th century society, their pages filled with deference, defiance, and subtle humor. Let's explore how letters reflected and shaped social relationships, stepping into the lives of those who wielded the quill. Class played a central role in letter writing, with different rules for different ranks. A letter to a nobleman required formal language, with florid salutations like, "My most gracious lord," and closing phrases like, "Your obedient servant." These letters, often written on the finest paper, were a form of tribute, their length a sign of respect. In 1736, a young lawyer wrote a 25-page letter to a duke seeking patronage, its prose so elaborate it took a week to compose. Letters between equals, like merchants or gentry, were more relaxed, filled with news and gossip, but still demanded care to avoid offense. A poorly worded letter could sour a friendship or ruin a business deal, making every word a matter of strategy. Gender shaped the art of letter writing in profound ways. Men, seen as the public face of the family, wrote letters on business, politics, or philosophy, their prose often formal and authoritative. Women, confined to domestic roles, used letters to assert their intellect and influence. In 1740, Lady Mary Wortley, Montagu's letters from Turkey, challenged stereotypes, describing foreign cultures with a wit that rivaled any man's. Women's letters, often written in secret, were a form of rebellion, their pages a space to speak freely. In 1775, Abigail Adams wrote to her husband John, urging him to advocate for women's rights, her words a quiet revolution in ink. Letters between men and women were governed by strict etiquette, particularly in courtship. A suitor's letter had to strike a balance between passion and propriety, with poetry and compliments carefully worded to avoid scandal. In 1759, a young Dublin gentleman wrote a 15-page letter to his beloved, describing a dream where they walked through a garden, his prose so tender it won her father's approval. Women, in turn, used letters to test a suitor's devotion, often delaying their replies to gauge his patience. In one amusing case, a London lady kept her suitor waiting 3 months for a reply, then sent a single line. Your letter was most agreeable. The suitor, undeterred, proposed soon after. Letters also reflected the dynamics of family life. Parents wrote to children with advice and admonitions, their letters a mix of love and authority. In 1745, a Boston father wrote to his son at Harvard a 20-page letter urging him to study hard and avoid taverns. The letter, read by candlelight, became a family heirloom, its words a guide for generations. Siblings exchanged letters filled with teasing and affection, their prose a record of shared memories. In 1760, a Virginia sister wrote to her brother, in London, joking about his foppish wig and begging for news of the city. These letters, tied with ribbon, were cherished keepsakes, their pages a link to home. The social dynamics of letter writing extended to professional relationships. Merchants wrote to suppliers with orders and complaints, their letters a blend of courtesy and firmness. In 1770, a Philadelphia trader wrote a 30-page letter to a London merchant, detailing a shipment of spoiled tea and demanding a refund. The letter, carried by ship, resolved the dispute, saving a valuable partnership. Diplomats used letters to negotiate treaties, their prose a delicate dance of flattery and strategy. In 1715, a French envoy wrote to a Spanish ambassador a 40-page letter that paved the way for a trade agreement, its words a triumph of diplomacy. Letters could also be a source of conflict, with misunderstandings sparking feuds. In 1738, a London gentleman took offence at a friend's letter, misreading a joke as an insult. The resulting exchange, filled with heated prose, lasted months, until a mutual friend intervened with a conciliatory letter. These disputes, though rare, were fodder for gossip, shared in salons and coffee houses, adding to the letter's social weight. In one famous incident, a Scottish laird challenged a rival to a duel over a letter's tone, only to settle the matter with a 50-page apology, written in a frenzy of ink and wax. The social dynamics of letter writing were a mirror of the era's values, reflecting the importance of connection and courtesy. Each letter was a thread in the fabric of society, weaving together individuals and communities in a world of distance and difference. In one touching example, a London widow wrote weekly letters to her sailor son, their words a lifeline during his years at sea, read by lamplight in a stormy cabin. As we settle into this chapter, picture a bustling coffee house where gentlemen exchange letters across tables, their voices low, their quills poised, the air filled with the scent of coffee and ink. The long letter was a social bond, its words a bridge between hearts in a complex world. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the coffee house, where the air is alive with the hum of conversation and the promise of connection, before we continue. Part 10. The Decline and Legacy of Long Letters. The art of writing really long letters, for all its beauty, began to fade by the late 1700s, as new technologies and social changes reshaped communication. Yet, like a well-sealed letter, its legacy endured, influencing literature, culture, and the way we connect across distance. The long letter, with its patience and poetry, left a mark on the world, its lessons as timeless as the ink that filled its pages. Let's explore the decline of this art, its brief revivals, and the enduring gifts it left behind as we drift toward the end of our soothing tale. The decline began with the rise of faster communication. In the 1790s, improvements in postal systems like stagecoaches and mail ships reduced delivery times, making shorter letters more practical. In Britain, the penny post, introduced in 1840, made mail affordable, encouraging brief, frequent notes over sprawling epistles. Writers, once accustomed to pouring everything into a single letter, adapted to the new pace, their quills scratching out quick updates instead of 50-page sagas. In 1795, a London merchant noted in his diary that a letter now takes a week, not a month, and so I write less, but oftener, a sign of the changing times. Technology played a role as well. The invention of the steel nib pen in the early 1800s replaced the fragile quill, making writing faster and less laborious. Paper, once a luxury, became cheaper with the rise of mechanized mills, reducing the need to cram words onto a single sheet. These changes, while practical, shifted the culture of letter writing, favoring efficiency over artistry. By the 1820s, the long letter was seen as old-fashioned, a relic of a slower era. In one Punch cartoon, a young man was shown laughing at his grandfather's 30-page letter, its pages spilling comically across the floor. Social attitudes also shifted. The rise of Romanticism in the late 18th century emphasized emotion over formality, leading to shorter, more spontaneous letters. Writers like Lord Byron penned brief, passionate notes, their prose a stark contrast to the elaborate epistles of the early 1700s. The growing middle class, with less time for leisurely correspondence, favored concise letters, often written in haste between work and family duties. In 1800, a Manchester's clerk wrote a one-page letter to his sister, apologizing for its brevity but citing the demands of the cotton trade. Despite its decline, the long letter never vanished entirely. In rural areas where postal services remained slow, writers continued to craft lengthy missives, their pages filled with news and nostalgia. In literary circles, figures like Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote sprawling letters, their prose a blend of philosophy and poetry. In 1810, Coleridge sent a 40-page letter to a friend describing a walk through the Lake District, its words so vivid they were later published. These holdouts kept the art alive, their quills a quiet rebellion against the march of progress. The long letter saw revivals in later centuries, each tied to moments of nostalgia or necessity. During the American Civil War, 1861-1865, soldiers wrote lengthy letters home, their pages a lifeline in the chaos of battle. In the 20th century, writers like Virginia Woolf revived the epistolary style, their letters a blend of wit and introspection. Today, the long letter lives on in emails and journals, where writers pour their thoughts into digital pages, echoing the patience of the 1700s. In one modern example, a blogger wrote a 5,000-word email to a friend, describing a year of travel, its length a nod to the epistles of old. The legacy of the long letter is profound. It shaped the epistolary novel from Clarissa to Dracula, giving literature a new form of storytelling. It influenced diplomacy, commerce, and science, with letters like those of Isaac Newton advancing human knowledge. It also taught the value of patience, a lesson that resonates in our fast-paced world. The act of writing a long letter, choosing each word, dipping the quill, sealing the wax, was a form of meditation, a way to slow down and savor the moment. In one poignant diary entry, a London woman wrote, "My letter is my sanctuary, where time pauses and the world is kind." The long letter's greatest gift was its ability to connect. In an era of distance and delay, it brought people together, its words a bridge across oceans and years. It captured the human spirit, from the joy of a wedding to the sorrow of a farewell. Its pages a record of lives lived fully. In one final example, a 1770 letter from a mother to her sailor son was found in a shipwreck, its words of love preserved in a sealed bottle, a testament to the enduring power of the written word. As we close this final chapter, imagine a quiet, 18th century study where a writer seals a letter by candlelight, its wax gleaming in the soft glow, its words ready to travel the world. The long letter may have faded, but its spirit lives on in every word we write, every moment we pause to connect. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the study, where the air is filled with the scent of ink and the promise of dreams as our story comes to an end. Thank you for joining me on this inky journey through the 1700s. If you enjoyed drifting through the world of long letters, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps us share these cozy stories with more sleepy history lovers like you. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss a tale, whether it's about forgotten arts or quirky historical quirks. In the comments, share your thoughts. Would you have written a 50-page letter in the 1700s or kept it short and sweet? And if you know a friend who'd love to relax with a bit of history, share this video with them. For more soothing stories, check out our playlist of bedtime tales linked below. Now, close your eyes, let the world fade away, and drift off to the gentle rhythm of the past. Good night.